Kelly is a speech pathologist and volunteers with Tremblecleft in Phoenix, Arizona. Her husband has Parkinson's.
With my husband, he had the tremor first and saw a neurologist for several years. They kept saying, well, we'll watch it. It could be Parkinson's. It might not be. He also got foot cramping, which he still gets when he exercises, which is kind of an unusual symptom when you exercise. But the younger people that get Parkinson's, sometimes it manifests a little bit differently. He's still quite active. He is now 51. He's probably had it about 10 years. However, he's just been officially diagnosed for 2.5 years. He still works. He's a research scientist. He bikes to work. He still can do everything that he enjoys doing. He just can't do it all at once. He has to pace himself. He has to learn to give himself permission to take a nap if we're going to be out late at night. We have 3 children that are still quite young, 13, 10, and 6. And we go camping and we go on trips and we do everything that a family does. We just have had to learn some ways of coping in terms of pacing and not rushing. When he rushes, it's much harder. But so far he enjoys life and lives each day very fully.
Jane's husband, Chuck, has Parkinson's disease.
The reason I'm talking about that time before is I was very angry. I didn't handle it very well. I would get frustrated with him, especially when he didn't want to do exercise. I was frustrated because he wanted to sleep, and I felt he was just plain lazy. When he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, it all started making sense. And as they say, you probably had the disease 2 or 3 years before you were diagnosed, and consequently, the damage had already been done. So we now had to face the fact that he had Parkinson's. Well, I'll be honest, in the beginning I was in denial. I felt that that was his problem and that he could go to the meetings, which he did. He's found some support group meetings, which he attended, and he'd come back and tell me about them, and I would say, fine, at least, you know, you're doing something about it. Well, about 6 to 7 months into his diagnosis, I attended one of his meetings, and I was just absolutely overwhelmed. The fact that all these people suffered from the same thing that my husband did, and they also were describing the symptoms they had. And I had a really new compassion for what these people are going through. It helped me to understand what my husband was going through and how frustrating it must have been for him for us to be so non-supportive in the beginning. So since that meeting, I have attended all the meetings with my husband because I'm learning, and I'm a big advocate now of the more information you have, the more you can do for yourself. And I feel in this disease, you have to be your own advocate. You have to get your information, you have to find out what works for you, you have to be aggressive and not stop. I feel the doctors in our area, the ones that I've met, are nice, but they just sort of give you a pill and say, take the medicine and go. And if you don't know what to ask, you know, you're lost. So the key is going to these support groups that we've been going to that are excellent in finding out information that you don't get from the doctor, by making new friends, by supporting each other, and finding out the new things on the horizon.
Pat has owned and operated a coffee house for 18 years. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's almost 4 years ago.
You get used to the idea, or maybe you never get used to the idea, but early on I treated it just like I do everything else in my life. There is an obstacle in my way, and you just learn. You either go over it, you go around it, whatever it takes, life goes on, and you do what you need to do to have quality of life, and that's what I do with every day of my life. Actually, I think I do everything I've always done, and I don't restrict myself. I allow myself to enjoy all the things I've always enjoyed, and I might have to work a little harder as I progress with my Parkinson's, but I still have the desire to live my life not as a person with Parkinson's, but as the person I've always been.
Pat has advice for the newly diagnosed Parkinson's patient.
I would tell them to take in a deep breath and don't worry about it. Your life will change, but not so dramatically that you can't deal with it. And if you deal with it aggressively, you will have quality of life and things, hopefully you have support from family and friends, which makes all the difference in the world. I have to say one thing. I have a customer who has Parkinson's and has had Parkinson's for over 15 years. I really didn't know anyone personally with Parkinson's when I was diagnosed, other than this gentleman who has since become a very dear friend. And his words will always stand in my mind. When I told him I had Parkinson's, he looked at me and he said, "Could be worse." And just like that, very casually, he says, "It could be worse. You'll do just fine." And those words have been in my mind ever since, and I feel like that was sort of the starting point of my attitude, if you will. Anyone who's newly diagnosed, like I say, take in a deep breath and deal with it. It's not the end of the world. There is quality of life, there is happiness, and you too will do everything you did for a long time. And hopefully with research and science the way it's going, maybe my brain will once again produce the dopamine I need, and that's my hope. And that's my hope for anybody diagnosed with Parkinson's. So, think positive.